Okay, ready. Thank you.
Ms. Morales, are we ready to begin?
Yes, ready now. Thank you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this hearing of the Budget and Finance Committee. Today is Monday, February 22nd, 2021. I'm Paul Krikorian, Chair of the committee, and we're ready to begin today's work. So let's begin with the roll call and establish a quorum.
Councilmember Krikorian?
Here.
Blumenfield?
Blumenfield, present.
De Leon?
Here.
Rodriguez?
Here.
Price? 4 members present and a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Before I call up Mr. Llewellyn for the presentation on item number 1, Ms. Morales, if you could please read out to the public the call-in information so that people can start getting ready for our public comment, which will take place right after we hear item 1.
Thank you. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on today's agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-655-3266 and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That will bring up item number 1.
Item number 1 is an oral report by the City Administrative Officer relative to President Biden's proposed COVID relief package.
Thank you. And we'll be hearing our regular report today from Ms. Huber or Mr. Llewellyn or both. I see Ms. Huber ready to go, so why don't we start off?
For me. Since we last met, there has been quite a bit of action on the proposed legislation with the House Oversight Committees forwarding its proposal to the House Budget Committee. That House Budget Committee is meeting as we speak on the overall legislation for implementation of the American Rescue Plan. The 2 key areas of funding that would come directly to the city include state and local assistance. And based on the formula that has been approved by the Oversight Committee and is now under consideration, the city looks like it could receive approximately $1.2 billion in funding. But I would note this is still an estimate. In order to access the funds once the legislation was enacted, the city would need to complete a certification stating that basically we require federal assistance and that it was our intent to use the funds in accordance with the legislation, which states that we would be using the funds to respond to or mitigate the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 or its negative economic impacts, cover costs incurred as a result of such emergency, replace revenue that was lost, delayed, or decreased, and that's based on a revenue projection as of January 27 of last year, January 2020, as a result of such emergency. So that revenue loss has to be of the emergency, and then to address the negative economic impacts of such an emergency. My understanding is that the House Budget Committee, it would be acting to approve their legislation today, and that it would be up for a House vote sometime this week. Would then go to the Senate and ultimately to the President. The goal and the timing that Congress is working under is the March 14th deadline for the unemployment insurance. The boost in the unemployment insurance expires on March 14th. Their goal is to have a whole package of economic stimulus approved prior to that. And this bill does continue enhanced unemployment, among many other things. It also provides an appropriation to FEMA. It doesn't specifically state in the legislation that that money is related to 100% reimbursement, and it is $50 billion instead of the $30 billion in the original proposal. However, I would note that for the FEMA projects that we currently have in the system, in the FEMA portal, last week the system updated and showed that those projects would be reimbursed at 100%, not 75%. So although FEMA still has yet to issue formal guidance, we have gotten some indication that our projects are moving to that 100% funding level. I would like to provide some context for the $1.2 billion in relationship to revenue loss. As you are aware, in the current year, we have been reporting approximately a $600 million decrease in revenue. We would also like to note that for last fiscal year, going back to when the COVID emergency began, we had a $200 million revenue loss that we attributed to COVID. So as of now, we are, could reasonably say that we are $800 million down based on where we thought we were going to be in our outlooks from a year ago. And obviously we are in the process of developing revenue estimates for the coming fiscal year, and do not expect those to be rosy at this point, but they are preliminary. There are other areas of funding that the city should expect to get. For instance, there is additional emergency rental assistance that we could anticipate would go to HSID, similar to the funding that was in the recent Consolidated Appropriations Act. There is also money for homelessness assistance, for housing and shelter, and those look to be direct allocations to the city, but no estimate on the amount yet. I have not been able to determine how much we might be able to get. So that's sort of where things stand at this point. There are other, it appears, grant opportunities and so on, maybe competitive grants that we might apply for. But absent any significant guidelines, it's kind of a little bit harder to assess whether we would qualify or not, and those guidelines are generally issued subsequent to the enactment by whatever the appropriate agency is. In terms of receiving the funds, the $1.2 billion, the legislation does say that payment should be made not later than 60 days after enactment, but it also would be subject to our filing the appropriate certification. And just for reference purposes, for the prior CARES Act coronavirus relief funds, once we submitted our certification, which we did, we were given a deadline by which we had to submit it, we actually received the funds in about a week, a little over a week. So hopefully that timing will be somewhat similar. Obviously, I outlined the broad discussion of how it could be spent. Similar to COVID, the coronavirus relief funds, there was a lot of additional guidance provided by Treasury that gave more specificity, and as jurisdictions asked questions, lots of FAQs that came out to explain and enhance our understanding of how to expend those funds. And so we would expect something similar, and we'll look forward to seeing those as soon as they're available. And then I see Rich is here, and if there are any questions, I'm available.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would like to add is, as we said last year, $700 million is a lot of money and is wonderful. It does not go as far as our own budget or our community's need. This is another amazing, if we end up with that kind of money. Again, it's going to maybe barely cover our revenue loss at all. It doesn't cover the need in the community and our revenue loss, and that's just through next year. The question is, how long will the tail on this, how long will our kind of post-COVID recession be? Economists vary on that, but we do not expect it to be done next year. Next year, hopefully the economy will be back by the end of the year. The question is, how many jobs will we have lost along the way that we're going to need to worry about for years to come? So it's an amazing opportunity. I'm very grateful to Washington, but it's never enough. Just kind of a bean counter reminder.
Well, thank you. This is the place where bean counter reminders matter the most. And so this is obviously positive news. It's much better than we have been hearing for some time now, because there's actually action. There's not the ossification that comes from the partisan polarization in Washington, and we're actually seeing progress. But it's a long way from done, first of all. This legislation could change dramatically in the Senate. We just really don't know what the final outcome will be, either in amount, in formula, in eligibility, or anything else until it's done. And then the other part of this is, and you're correct, Mr. Llewellyn, I don't think you could say it often enough, that even if this full amount were made available to us, right off the top, nearly $1 billion of that can go to what we've already lost in projected revenues. So before we even get to spending anything affirmatively for anything new, that simply gets us back to even. And again, that's good news, because it means we may not have to suffer as many of the painful cuts as we anticipated we would. So that's all good. But I think it's important for the members of this committee to be clear with the rest of our colleagues that this is not one of those times where we're getting a boatload of money that we can start spending on a lot of new things, and especially because ongoing expenses are not going to be able to be paid for by this one-time money that we get to make up for lost revenues. So in terms of the certification, I assume the preparation of the certification is already well underway, so that the day President Biden's signature goes on this bill, we're ready to submit it.
Since the certification does not exist, I would not say that it is underway. We would have to wait until Treasury gave us that actual document. But if it is similar to the one that we did for the coronavirus relief funds, it was simply a one-page document that basically we certified that we intended, that we had a need, and that we then intended to spend it in the accordance with the legislated guidelines. And the mayor's office took the lead on signing that document. Okay. So we will work with the mayor's office on ensuring that any certification is submitted timely.
So the certification doesn't necessarily require voluminous documentation demonstrating our revenue assumptions and expenses and things like that. It's just a we need it and we'll use it properly.
It did not before. I'm hopeful that this one will be along the same lines, but we will need to see that guidance in terms of what we have to do to document the revenue loss. But my guess is that's going to be not as part of the certification, but probably as part of our documenting and supporting the use of the funds for that purpose. And again, the reporting requirements and portal and all that followed, so it's sort of an iterative process, but I would expect that the guidance will give us more detail on what they mean by the January 2020 document and projections, and what we need to do to show that what our revenue loss was related to the emergency, and we'll have to look at that and then work through that as we look to use the funds for revenue loss or other purposes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you very much. couple of questions. You said it can be future revenue, right? As well as in terms of the making up for lost revenue, we got $600 million already, $200 million last year, with $600 this year, $200 million this year. How far in the future can we go with our, projected revenue loss for reimbursement on this money?
I'm assuming that some of that will be expanded upon in the actual guidance documents that come out, but there is no expenditure or, there's no deadline on these funds. We don't have to use them or expend them by a date certain, so that sort of infers maybe some future loss, particularly when they're looking at these other pots of funds going out to 2030, 2025, when you look through the different sections. But again, since they are already sort of talking about FEMA assistance going through September of this year and so on, that it seems to be forward-looking, and that seems to be a reasonable assumption that we could potentially use next year's revenue projections. Right. Again, we have to compare it to what we were projecting in January of 2020, and thankfully we do our outlook, so we have something at least for the general fund to turn to say this is what we were projecting we were going to get, this is now what we have been getting, and we can hopefully document it that way. But the guidance has to be fleshed out.
Right. I guess my point is that there's going to be, sadly, we have more than enough revenue loss to pretty much cover the entire amount that's out there. And the tricky part for us is going to be, as a council, having the discussions about how that money gets spent. And while it seems obvious to me that our first and foremost we should repay or avoid any debt financing, I think we need to set that as a policy, as a committee here and as a council, so that we don't do stupid, so to speak, and finance. We're doing a lot of things right now that are financially not smart because we're in a desperate situation. Not that we're doing something stupid, but we're doing something we wouldn't do if we weren't in such a financial hole. And that needs to be the first thing we do, is to start making our decisions, more rational in cost benefit and not out of the desperation of the situation. And restoring services that have been cut, including core functions, is going to be part of this. Returning our city workers to normal status. All of those things, even before we get to all of the new things that we want to do, and some of the things that we have to do around COVID. Now, in terms of as a governance matter, and I guess this is more of a council thing, but we have to make sure how that money gets spent and that it comes through this budget committee and through the regular order of things. And is there, let me rephrase that. When the money comes in, how does it come in? Does it go to the general fund to be spent? Does it come in more like a COVID package?
Because we would need to be tracking and reporting on these funds, we will probably want to set up some sort of special fund similar to what we did for the Coronavirus Relief Fund, so that we can accurately track and document what we spent and used the funds on. I doubt that it could just come to the general fund.
Yeah, I guess.
Council member, I think your council will vote to move the money from the special fund to the reserve fund, to programming, to whatever your council chooses to move it to.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I hope that comes, Mr. Chair, that a lot of that comes through this committee in terms of dealing with the bigger issues of the city and not treating this as a separate funding source that's just on top of everything else. Because I think you understand that, and certainly CAO does, but I understand the temptation by the outside world to see this money as just newfound money, when it's about preventing the city from being completely hollowed out. Yeah,
and I would
You said
suggest,
that exceptionally well, Mr. Blumenfield, and I'm just, two things. One is, I expect to have before this committee soon some recommendations on an architecture for restoration first. And that will include, of course, restoration of the reserve funds and the budget stabilization fund as well, before we get into, and you outlined it, I think, very well, about the need to reverse the damage before we proceed to new expenditures. And then the second component of what you said is exactly right, which is that this money, because most of it is for lost revenues, really must, in its entirety, be considered by the Budget and Finance Committee. Because, this is money that is replacing money that would have been part of this committee's jurisdiction otherwise. So I think that should be clear. I hope that's clear too, just on its face. So I'm sorry, Ms. Huber, I interrupted you as you were starting to add something.
I think I would just caution against using these funds to start new ongoing programs, in part when you're considering that the bulk of it, or the focus of it, is towards, restoring revenues that we would be putting towards our existing activities, unless there's a very clear discussion that we want to do this new activity instead of, say, this old activity, because otherwise putting a lot of this to new expanded programming, we don't necessarily have the revenue growth when the economy recovers to support that ongoing expenditure. And hopefully Rich agrees that I said that correctly.
And one more quick question, and I'll yield my time. Ms. Huber, you mentioned about the FEMA money, that we have a certain amount in the system that we've already got, that it looks like we'll get 100% back on. How much FEMA money do we have in the system, in the pipeline right now, that we're asking back for reimbursement?
Shoot, I have that, but I don't have that document right in front of me. I forgot to pull it. We had, I don't want to say off the top of my head. I am in the process of doing the report back to the motion, and so we will include that. I just more was pointing out that the projects that we had already submitted have already been pegged to now be at the 100% reimbursement level.
Yeah, I'd love to know.
I apologize, I don't have that number in front of me.
No worries, I'd love to know that, and I know I'm a broken record on this stuff, but I want to see us just amping up our FEMA eligible expenses, particularly around homelessness and those things, as much as we can. And it feels frustratingly slow when we can get that reimbursement, and I'm still trying to figure out how much of this is a resource issue, what's a finance issue, and so we can solve that problem. But it just, every day that goes by that we're not taking full advantage of that FEMA money, is a lost opportunity. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll say I hear your frustration. It is in part a resource issue. It's a
could you repeat that? You were muted and unmuted, so I only got.
Sorry. I share your frustration issue, and we are working as hard as we can. It is in part a resource issue of just trying to get all of the information from the departments, review it, validate it, and then package it up into projects into the system. So I share that frustration. We are working as hard as we can to put more resources towards it. The mayor's office has been generous in giving us staff to help us do the reviews. We are looking at ways with them to put more resources to this, but it's not something that it's kind of a skill set that I can't just take anybody and plop them into this. And they have to have some understanding of the finances and how things work and doing grant applications and things like that. So, but again, we are continuing to move this forward as quickly as possible.
But we haven't come up against the finance problem yet, where we just don't have. We have things we want to spend the FEMA money on, but we don't have the cash flow. That's not the issue at the moment, or that is still the issue?
Well, as with everything with FEMA, we have to spend the dollar before we can get the dollar back. FEMA is
so,
on
Councilmember,
basis.
I would say the answer is certainly the front funding is an issue for this jurisdiction and everywhere in the country. But so far, the mayor and council have decided that spending, quite frankly, is more important. And so you've been willing to borrow to do so. So I don't believe the absence of front funding has prevented us from doing FEMA payable things. What is the sort of the difficulty is essentially our billing department needs more assistance, but we're doing to get the money back. But I do think you or council and mayor have been willing, quite frankly, to borrow to front fund, which is what everyone has to do. FEMA is still a reimbursement program, and it requires you to reimburse based on, quite frankly, actuals. They will not reimburse based on estimates. You have to actually bills behind it, the timesheets behind it, et cetera, to say how many hours of overtime the fire department spent.
Right. So the choke point is not getting the cash flow. The choke point is what? Is getting the billing?
It's essentially our billing department, sir. Yes, sir. But which we are working to expedite. But FEMA is still currently a slow pay. The administration has said they hope to accelerate their pay rate, but they are still a slow pay. But they're a good pay. That's the advantage of FEMA. And to date, at least, your council and mayor, with our assistance, obviously with your committee's assistance, have figured out how to keep doing the work we need to do, even with the cash flow, issues.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, one more thing, sir.
Yeah. I'm sorry, before you move off that point, though, Mr. Llewellyn, I just wanted to add to that, because I think, there's a sort of perception out there that FEMA is like Allstate or something. They come out when there's a disaster and they just write us a big fat check. And I don't want anybody to leave this conversation with the assumption that somehow our budgetary concerns are because we're not submitting FEMA invoices fast enough. That's just not true at all. We will get that all done, and we will eventually get reimbursed for it. But it sometimes takes years for that money to come back from FEMA. Not months, years. So, yes, Ms. Huber and her staff have a lot on their plates right now. But even if all of that was done tomorrow, we still wouldn't be able to count on this money coming back to us anytime, within the immediate future. It will come, but the cash flow concerns are very real and very serious issues when we go on a fiscal year basis from year to year. Sorry, Mr. Llewellyn, go ahead.
Sir, just one last thing for your committee. We have been talking about general fund revenue, which we've been reporting on constantly. We do have losses in our special funds as well. Our road money, which is much of it is tax-based, both gas tax and sales tax are down. So we have even more losses beyond this sort of general fund revenue, which your committee and we, quite frankly, focus on most regularly. The numbers are even already are bigger. We're trying to quantify those numbers as well.
Very good. Thank you. Members, any other questions on this item? Okay, so we're going to hold this one on the desk for now, and we'll go ahead next to our public comment period of the meeting. So, Ms. Morales, if you could, again, provide instruction to the public on how to call in.
Yes, thank you. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on today's agenda should call 669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-655-3266 and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will go ahead and, I'm sorry, before we take our first speaker, members, I did just want to let you know what I would recommend for consent approval, and we won't do that until after public comment. But just in case you have any questions or concerns, I'd recommend on item number 15 that we approve the city attorney's recommendations. On item number 16, that we approve the city attorney's recommendations. On item number 19, that we note and file the investment report. On item 20, that we approve the motion, and that I think Mr. Blumenfield may have some technical amendments on that motion, which we will hear when we take the matter up. Unless, Mr. Blumenfield, you'd like to mention them now on item number 20?
Sure, if you'd like. I'm happy to go do that. Let me go grab them. Sorry about this.
No problem.
Have them on the bottom. Once you come back to me, I'll pull them up.
Okay, no problem. No problem. So then on item 21, my recommendation would be to approve the motion, and on item 22, the recommendation would be to approve. So all of those would be taken up on consent unless members have questions or concerns or wish to have them heard separately. And with that, we can go ahead and begin our public comment.
Caller with the last 4 digits 2780, please dial star 6 to unmute. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Lisa Hart. I would like to speak on item 20.
Thank you. Go right ahead. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm with the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. Our Energy Committee has taken a position in support of this motion, and I want to thank the Sunrise Project for spearheading this effort and Councilmember Blumenfield and his staff for introducing this. Personally, I think this is the sort of thing we should have done a long time ago, but it is better late than never. And I don't think it makes sense on any level to continue investing in fossil fuels. These are on their way to becoming stranded assets, as we all know, and they aren't good for us environmentally, socially, or financially. So I thank you in advance.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last 4 digits 7083, please hit star 6 to unmute. State your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yes, it's Eric Previn, and I'd like to speak on the available items in the general public comment.
Go right ahead, Mr. Previn.
Okay. Well, we're rich. We're bloody rich. This is fantastic. Well done on Ms. Huber's part and Mr. Llewellyn for getting in there early. And I would recommend replacing some of these billing experts. Let's get some more billers in there to bill quicker. It's very, very good news that we're getting all this one-time money, and we should put it to quick use for lots of new and exciting projects. Now, of course, I'm being a little facetious. I agree and concur that we are by no means out of the woods, but it is a bit of good news. The controller has also found at item 23 about $51 million lying around, which I think is good news in a way. Although I'm not sure it's good news. Ask Blumenfield how he feels about the $446,000 that's kind of loafing around after the Warner project for his group to do cultural stuff with. You know, they put that money in a benefit program. I don't know. I mean, I'm very titillated with this kind of a heist, and I admire it being at the very end of the agenda so nobody would look at it. But you didn't even mention it, sir, so that's good work as well. You know, we have to take it, but should we? I don't know. And if people notice, they're going to wonder, well, then why do we have any rules if we just decide suddenly and, you know, arbitrarily that after 2 years of no drafting down on an account, then it's gone? I don't know. I'm very, very conflicted on that one, I'll be honest. Thank you for giving the fire truck to the people of Beirut. One quick question is, could it possibly be more expensive to get it there than to give it to them? I mean, I know they need it. For God's sakes, they had a horrible, horrible event there. And, the people have been suffering for far too long, so I do appreciate your taking a look at that. And I want to just concur that we should, FEMA is a very good long but slow biller. And I like the idea of the fire department standing around on quadruple overtime, giving vaccines, and doing stuff like that. But one thought was to cancel the OVB project that Englander jammed through in a manic episode, as you all recall, at the budget hearing a couple of seasons ago. And the other thing is, maybe we should, sir, because I know we always get a little confused, make sure that every single department of the city gets an opportunity to be vetted by the public as well, so that each agenda item reflects a department, unlike last time when we had to...
That was the end of your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last 4 digits, 0518. Please hit *6 to unmute. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Dan Kegel. I would like to speak on item 20.
Go right ahead, sir.
I'd just like to note that since this motion was introduced, Exxon Oil was delisted from the Dow. California announced that we wanted to stop the sale of gasoline-powered automobiles by 2035. GM announced that it would stop selling gasoline-powered automobiles by 2035. And Ford now has announced that they will stop selling gasoline-powered cars in Europe by 2030. It's about time that we made sure that our investments, including the insurance company's investments on our behalf, as it were not at risk from the collapse of the gas and oil industry that is, if not upon us now, coming quick. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please.
Oh, apologies, I was on mute. Caller with the last 4 digits, 8639. Please hit *6 to unmute. Caller with the last, oh, there we go. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, this is Matt Wade. I'd like to speak on item 20.
Go right ahead. 1 minute.
Hi, I am urging this committee to pass item 20. I'm very concerned about LADWP's plan to get to net zero emissions after the deadline that we have for 2030, and it's so important that we take absolutely every step that we can to reduce fossil fuel usage, including reducing our investments in them by proxy of our insurance companies. So please pass item 20. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last 4 digits, 1707. Please hit *6 to unmute. Caller with the last 4 digits, 1707. Please hit *6 to unmute. Please state your name and the item.
Yes, I'm Rhonda Plank-Richard. I'm also speaking on item 20. I'm a parent and a teacher, and I agree with all the speakers who came before me. I'm so concerned for our kids. We've got to do this quickly. Let's use our very sizable insurance purchasing power to leverage change in the insurance industry, and let's build momentum for other cities to join us. And I wanted to say I'm very grateful to my representative. I live in Woodland Hills, Councilmember Blumenfield, for bringing this motion to the council and for his continuing leadership on this critical issue. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last 4 digits, 4208. Please hit *6 to unmute. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Hey, Rob Kwan, I'd like to speak on 11920 in general public comment.
Go right ahead, Mr. Klein.
Thank you. I think item 20 is a great step forward. I just also, want to highlight what we could do with our investment policy. We currently have nothing that encourages good investments or discourages bad investments. That's something that I remember going to a lot of your offices 3-4 years ago almost, and highlighting San Francisco's investment policy. I believe it was page 13. They have a whole socially responsible investment policy. It's not nearly as restrictive as some cities like Santa Monica that are smaller. It's definitely workable, and I think as you look at racers and you're doing things there, like these are all great steps, but we should also look at that big investment portfolio that we have as a city and our responsibility there. I think it really undermines claims that you can be trusted in moving forward with a public bank. That
is the end of your time. And caller with the last 4 digits, 0850, please hit *6 to unmute. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
20 and general public comment. My name is Lydia Ponce, and I live in Venice, and I'm with American Indian Movement, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Los Angeles, SoCal 350. I want to thank Dan Kegel for the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. The commitment we have to respond to global warming and climate crisis requires free, prior, and informed consultation and consent with the local tribal people, which is a big fail on this part. The City of Los Angeles should not be providing revenue to insurance companies that contribute to climate change by investing in and underwriting fossil fuels, period. So why isn't there an inventory list of all the insurance policies that are held by the City of Los Angeles? We need to be better relatives for all Angelenos, including our critter relatives. This is a great start, but let's move it forward like it is an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Council Chair, that concludes our public comment for today.
Very good. Thank you very much. Then we will go ahead and close public comment on all agenda items and close general public comment. And that will take us then back to our consent calendar. So, members, are there any of those items that I mentioned that you would like to offer comment on or pull from consent?
Could you repeat which items? I think there was one, but I don't remember.
Sure. So I will read the recommendations again. They are items number 15, approve the city attorney's recommendations. Item 16, approve the city attorney's recommendations. Item 19, note and file. Item 20, approve the motion with technical amendments that Mr. Blumenfield will offer, if any. Item 21, approve the motion. And item 22, approve the motion.
I'd like to call 21 special for a few comments.
Okay. And did you want to make your technical amendment on item 20?
Yes, please. If now's the appropriate time, I'll read it to you.
Now would be the right time, yes.
Okay. I therefore move that the council instruct the city administrative officer, risk management, with the cooperation of the department chief sustainability officers, to report in 30 days with 1, an inventory of insurance policies held by the city, and 2, a method of evaluating insurers based on the extent to which they invest in and underwrite companies engaged in fossil fuel operations that pose the greatest harm to the environment, including coal mining, tar sand drilling, and pipeline transport. And I further move that the council instruct the city administrative officer and request the airport, water, and power, and harbor departments to report in 90 days with options for how to use this evaluation method when choosing companies for which to purchase or renew insurance.
All right, and with those amendments, I would recommend consent approval of item 20 as well. Any other questions, members, or items that you wish to pull from consent? Mr. Price, did you? Sorry, I'm having a little trouble bringing everybody's picture.
Item 17. I'll wait till you get to 17.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no other comments or questions or polls, let's go ahead and take up the consent items and call the roll, please.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
5 ayes. Those items are approved as stated by the chair and member.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Blumenfield, did you want to take up item 21 so we can get that behind us too, or is that going to be an item of discussion? Oh, you're muted, sir.
Sorry about that. Not a long discussion. I just wanted to make a couple of comments because we have been getting a number of retirees who are concerned about this, and I wanted to make it clear that this is not about reducing in any way coverage for retired employees. That's the last thing we want to do. We take our commitments as very seriously as a sacred oath when we make it to our retirees. This is about whether, due to the increases in the availability of subsidies for Affordable Care Act policies, that we might be able to provide health care coverage for our retirees at a reduced cost to the city, especially for retirees who are not yet eligible for Medicare. Because of the Obamacare and some other, covered California, there are ways that we can get people covered where it's less money on the city. So this is not to do it right away, but to explore it. But again, just to make it absolutely clear, because there's a lot of concerns, we're exploring it in a way that would not reduce coverage for retired employees. We understand that we can explore that and keep our commitment to our retirees and not even consider things that are going to lower that commitment. And that's all. Thank you. You're on mute. Mr. Corey, Mr. Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion on that item, I would recommend approval of the motion, and we can go ahead and call the roll.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
5 ayes. The matter is approved.
Okay, thank you very much. That then will take us to item number 17.
Item number 17 is a CAO report relative to the third construction projects report for fiscal year 2020-21. The Information Technology and General Services Committee waived consideration of this matter.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I want to know when the appropriate time to do this is, but I have to recuse myself on one element of this, or I don't have to, but I think an abundance of caution. On RR, on this item is one of the expenditures. It deals with a money that goes to the Discovery Cube. My wife years ago was the executive director of the Discovery Cube, but she still sits on the foundation board, even though she does no longer get paid by them and all the rest. Since there is that connection there, at least on that RR item, I need to recuse, and I would ask you or the city attorney whether I need to recuse on the entirety of the item or just on that portion. But I didn't want to get into discussion if I need to recuse on the entire item.
Well, regardless of what the city attorney may say, I would recommend that for simplicity's sake, you just recuse on the whole item because it would have probably been a consent item anyway, but for the fact that there are some technical amendments that need to be made. So unless you feel strongly otherwise.
That's fine. So I'm going to turn my camera off while you deal with this item and
very good.
Myself from this item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blumenfield. Okay, Mr. Blumenfield is recused, and the CAO has, I think, some recommendations on this. So why don't we turn it over to the CAO?
Good afternoon, Chair Corian and committee members. Justin Lawson, CAO. Hello. Would you like me to briefly introduce the report or move directly into our amendments?
You can give, I mean, this is a fairly routine report, but you can give a brief overview if you wish, and then if that's necessary to put your recommendations in context, for sure.
Absolutely. So before you is the third construction projects report. The report recommends a total of $34.98 million in transfers and appropriations for previously authorized construction projects. Of this amount, $15.81 million is for the Bureau of Street Services, $4.15 million for the Bureau of Engineering, and $14.97 million to be transferred to other city funds. There are no known impacts to the general fund in connection with the authorized projects covered in this report, and any potential increases in operations and maintenance costs associated with these projects would be addressed through the city's budget process as projects are completed. We have representatives in attendance who can answer any specific project questions, and I will begin by reading in to the record the first of our three amendments.
Yes, please do.
And my apologies, these are a bit long. The first, we are amending item AA, and the amendment reads as follows. Replace the controller's instructions reflected in attachment 1 of the 2020-21 third construction projects report, Council File 20-1021-S2, for item AA, Huntington Drive sidewalk improvements in its entirety, as needed to provide an appropriation of $25,000 to the Bureau of Street Lighting for the purchase of 2 street lights to be installed at the site location as follows. From Fund 42443 Community Development Trust Fund, account number 43R539 Huntington Drive Sidewalk in the amount of $40,000, and account number 43S186, the Bureau of Street Services account in the amount of $160,000, for a total of $200,000. And this will be transferred to Fund 186, Bureau of Street Services Fund, account number 006020, operating supplies, in the amount of $15,000, and Fund 184, Bureau of Street Lighting Fund, account number 001010, salaries general, in the amount of $10,000, and account number 008780, street lighting improvement supplies account, in the amount of $15,000, for a subtotal of $25,000. And finally, Fund 194, Department of Transportation Fund, account number 006020, operating supplies, in the amount of $160,000, for a grand total of $200,000. And that concludes the First Amendment. Amendment number 2, we are amending item NNN, and it reads as follows. Replace the controller's instructions reflected in attachment 1 of the 2020-21 third construction projects report for item NNN, CAO GSD Bridge Maintenance Division staffing costs, to list the appropriate account numbers as follows. This means transferred from Fund 154, the CIEP Fund, account number 00R656, Prep for Economic Development and Homelessness Projects, in the amount of $160,000. And this will be transferred to Fund 140, General Services Department Fund, account number 001120, Benefits Hiring Hall, in the amount of $160,000. And then, Mr. Chair, Amendment 3, I believe, was going to be introduced by Council Member Price, but I don't want to speak for him. Would you like me to read that amendment into the record now?
Mr. Yes. Price seems to be indicating in the affirmative, so
yes,
that'd be fine.
So I'll read that.
So is that okay, Mr. Price, or would you prefer to do it, or have CEO?
No, I prefer CEO to do it, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our third amendment is a new item, and it reads as follows. Transfer $1,236,702 from the Bureau of Engineering Special Services Fund, number 682, Department 50, various pedestrian tunnel closures account, number 50SVEJ, in the following accounts to the Department of General Services Fund, number 100, Department 40, for the pedestrian tunnel closures of Fletcher Drive, Estara, Santa Monica, Normandy, 52nd and Vermont Avenue, 52nd and Hoover Street, 60 and Figueroa Street, and Hollywood Boulevard in New Hampshire. And we are transferring the funds to account number 001014, Salaries Construction, in the amount of $96,779. Account number 001101, Hiring Hall Construction, in the amount of $536,530. Account number 001121, benefits hiring and Hall Construction, in the amount of $328,631. And finally, account number 003180, construction materials and supplies, in the amount of $280,762. Section 2, transfer and appropriate $6,349 in the Council District 4 portion of the Street Furniture Revenue Fund, number 43D, Department 50, and $6,349 in the Council District 13 portion of the same fund, totaling $12,698, to the Department of General Services, Fund 100, Department 40, account 003180, construction materials and supplies for the completion of the Hollywood and New Hampshire Tunnel Closure Project in Council Districts 4 and 13. And finally, Section 3, authorize the City Administrative Officer to make any technical corrections or clarifications to the above fund transfer instructions in order to effectuate their intent, including any corrections and changes to funds or other account numbers. And that completes the amendments.
You sure that's it?
My apologies, yes.
It's okay. It's all right. I admire your fortitude, being able to get through it all. Okay, any questions? Oh, Ms. Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had a quick question, but I believe we're going to probably follow up separately, Justin, about the transfer of the $500,000 from the UB to the Cube, and just to garner more history and context about what that covers, and particularly in sustaining any programming during these downtimes. So I just wanted to, I guess we'll follow up separately on that, but I'm just curious how that was programmed and what that history was.
Yeah, absolutely. I can reach out to your staff to set up a time for us to speak more about that issue.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Bernice Hollins with the CAO's office. I'm just confirming we do have that meeting scheduled with your office for this Thursday.
Okay, thanks so much, Bernice.
Sure thing.
Mr. Price, anything else on this?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lawson, for your excellent recitation.
And surprisingly, that was actually kind of a minor technical amendment. It just took a lot of words to get there. So thank you for that. And if there's no other comments or questions on this, members, I would recommend approval of the item as amended. And let's go ahead and call the roll.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Blumenfield. De Leon.
Mr. Blumenfield is recused.
Thank you. Absent. De Leon.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
4 ayes. This matter is approved as amended.
Very good. Thank you, members. So, members, it appears that there were some people who were on the queue for comment who apparently didn't raise their hands timely to be called. And so if they are still there, I'd like to give them an opportunity on items number 20, which we will have to reopen without objection for further comment and reconsider. They wanted to comment on item 20, and I think there was at least one person who wanted to comment on item 18. So as to those two items only, 18 and 20, we will take additional public comment from anybody who's still left in the queue, 1 minute per speaker or per item, and we'll go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I said, oh, I was reading the wrong number. I'm sorry. Numbers 20, which we'll have to reconsider, and number 23, which we have not yet taken up. So with that, let's go ahead and open up public comment again as to those two agenda items only.
And Mr. Chair, just for the record, I've rejoined the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield.
Those wishing to make public comment, please dial *9. Again, those wishing to make public comment, please dial *9. And we'll take the first caller. Caller with the last 4 digits, 5394. Please dial *6 to unmute. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Thank you for giving me another opportunity. I'm Mark Holbatter. I'm the Chief of Facilities for the Los Angeles Unified School District. I'd like to speak to item 23.
Good to hear from you, Mark. Go right ahead.
Well, thank you, sir. In item 23, I just recently became aware that there was some unspent funds for the Warner Center Air Quality Trust Fund, the amount of $308. It was set up specifically to fund air conditioning and filters for nearby schools. We have Canoga Park High School, Woodland Hills Academy and Humanities Middle School, and Hart Street Elementary. I would like to respectfully request that we still have the opportunity to take advantage of those unspent funds. I'd like to assure everyone that making sure we've got the best air quality we could possibly have for our schools remains a very high priority for us, now more than ever. We've rewired all of our air conditioning so we can run our fans, even when the heat and the compressors are not running, just to circulate air. We've refiltered every single school to MERV 13, which is a filter made out of the same quality as the
Thank you, sir, for your comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Horner. Next speaker.
Oh, perfect. Caller with the last 4 digits, 8545. Please hit *6 to unmute. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, Kathy Schaefer, number 20.
Hi, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm the Legislative Coordinator for San Fernando Valley Climate Reality Project and a resident of Sherman Oaks. I just wanted to let you know that the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council has approved a CIS for this motion. It just didn't get posted yet, but it's on the way. So in terms of my comments, I find it ironic that the city is paying for insurance policies from companies that contribute to the proliferation of greenhouse gases with their investments in and underwriting of the fossil fuel industry. We know that greenhouse gas emissions cause climate change, which results in significant air pollution, wildfires, and drought. These conditions hurt our economy as well as the health and safety of our residents. The city officials who are responsible for purchase of the insurance policies should have the data mandated by this motion in order to make informed decisions when they select insurers for the city. So thank you for opening the comment back up. I'm sure a lot of people hung up, but there are a lot of people in support of this motion. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And if anybody did hang up, my apologies for that. It was just a technical issue about people raising their hands and indicating that they wanted to speak. But the good news is the matter did pass. So if anybody was calling in support, we're already ahead of you on that one. So thank you very much. But go right ahead. Let's go right ahead to the next speaker.
We don't have any more hands up, so I'll repeat the instruction. Those wishing to make public comment, please dial *9 if you have not already spoken. Those wishing to make public comment and you have not already spoken, please dial *9. And Mr. Chair, I don't see any other hands from new callers.
Very good. Thank you very much. Then, members, since we had just reconsidered item 20 for purposes of taking that additional comment, we'll need to revote on that matter. So let's go ahead and call the roll on item 20 again. On the previous recommendation on item 20.
As amended.
Thank you.
Yes.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
5 ayes. This matter is approved as amended.
Very good. Thank you very much. That'll bring up item number 18 next.
Item number 18 is the CEO reports relative to the COVID-19 Emergency Response Account, General City Purposes Fund Status Report for the weeks ending February 5th, 2021 through February 12th, 2021.
Okay. Thank you. And who do we have presenting on item 18?
Good afternoon, Samantha Chu with the Office of the City Administrative Officer.
Good afternoon, Ms. Ju. Go right ahead.
Before the committee are weekly status reports covering approved expenditures from the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund for the period February 1st through February 12th, 2021. As of February 12th, the remaining balance is $7.27 million, and I'm available for any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions on this item? I'm sorry, 1 second, please. 1 second, Molly. Okay, my apologies. Any questions on this item, members? I see no hands raised. So the recommendation is to go ahead and note and file that item. So, and remind me, do we need to, in committee, vote on note and files since we're virtual?
Yes, we have been.
Okay, then let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
5 ayes. This item will be noted and filed.
Thank you very much. And that will bring up next item 23.
Item number 23 is a controller report relative to drawing down balances on all available special funds not controlled by proprietary departments for cash flow and closing out any special funds without active transactions.
Okay. And who do we have presenting on this item? Oh, Mr. Crawford, welcome.
Welcome.
Go right ahead.
So the item in front of you is our follow-up in response to this committee's discussion a month ago regarding the idle funds of the city. We've provided a list of about $51 million in balances in funds which have not been used, and we've defined used as seeing expenditure activity transfers out over the last at least 2 years. So obviously, as you look at the list, it covers pretty much every sector of what the city does. Has some fund that was established at some point and has kind of dropped out of the eye of the administrating department, and this is the list we've provided. Our recommendation at this point, following your committee's lead and work that we've been doing for with our dedicated staffing for 2.5 years, though our office has been working on it for a lot longer than that. Our recommendation is essentially that we move this money to the reserve fund because we're in a moment when, as you all know, the reserve fund is desperately needing cash. There are admittedly a lot of issues with taking a giant sweep of 100 different funds. So we're prepared to work on that. We've proposed one way we think could work for that would be to move the money as loans and then work through which of the items would be permanently transferred and which of the items at some point might need to be transferred back. That is one option. We've heard a couple suggestions of making some more broader, more aggressive actions as well. It was also suggested at the last time you discussed this issue that our office connect with the city attorney, and we have done that and have actually been working pretty closely with them on issues of escheatment for the past probably 6 months to a year. So we've established a good working relationship with them on this. So I know there are probably a lot of questions about individual funds, and probably in the interest of getting complete and accurate information, I won't try and answer them all off the top of my head. But as we talk about the kind of overall issues, I think that's what we can sort of discuss today. And then we'll follow up on anything else that needs to be followed up on.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Crawford. And thank you for your ongoing work on this and the controller's ongoing work. It's been one of our larger joint projects between my office and yours to try to finally get to some finality on some of these. And I think before we get into details of particular funds, which I know members of the committee want to highlight, I want to take one step back and put this into a larger context, because a lot of times the public discourse out there does not serve this issue well when there's discussion about $1.5 billion in special funds and so on. Because I think what a lot of people don't understand, and that kind of discussion does not help them to understand, that many times our special funds are vitally important, ongoing operational funds that are being used for specific purposes. And so out of that, out of those billions of dollars in special funds, what you've done in this project is winnowed it down to really the relatively small number of funds that are relatively idle. But even among those funds, there may very well be very good reasons that money has been held idle. Number one, it could be for an ongoing long-term project where that money will be needed, as we heard a few descriptions of in public comment, and I think members are going to mention other projects specific to their district where they have to hold that money for a project that may not be built for 2 years or 3 years from now, for example. Very good reason to keep something in a special fund. It may be that the definition of the special fund when it was first created is so narrow that now it cannot be used. And we can't simply take it, and we can't use it because it was for a very narrow purpose, which is now moot for some reason. And then there are those who, which it's just sitting there and probably could be utilized for some productive purpose, but maybe without this light of day, bringing them all forward and sort of airing them out, nobody saw that there was an opportunity to do that. So I know members are going to ask about particular funds, but in a broader sense, what I would like this process to be, and then I think we're almost there, is at our next, when we bring this report back the next time, I'm glad that we've been working with the city attorney's office. I would like to actually have specific recommendations from the controller and the city attorney as to which funds can be escheated, which funds can be borrowed from, and which funds should be returned to the original payer of the funds. Because I want to have actual action items to do one of those three things as to any fund that we're not making an affirmative decision to maintain. That's what I would like to see the outcome of this be. Now, in the process of doing that, we're also going to sort of air the many funds that I think members are going to talk about in a moment now, that they are holding for a specific purpose. And as to those, I think we need to instill a regimen of continued monitoring so that on an annual basis, perhaps, we continue to review these and see, do we still need it? Has it become obsolete? Is it now moot? Is there money left over in the budget after the project is complete? And that would be, an ongoing monitoring process that we should just institutionalize. And I know we do that in general. I know that's part of the controller's normal auditing process and everything. I know. But I think bringing it out before the council also rattles departments' cages a little bit, and it rattles council members' cages a little bit, and they, are sort of forced to make the decision about, are we really needing to keep this for another year or not? So that's my philosophy on this. Okay, so with that,
I would just add to that. Certainly, we can work with the city attorney's office and look through our list and come up with the kind of categorizations you're talking about. The other thing I would say to what you're saying regarding the idle funds, as we've been releasing this list and evaluating, there has been a fair amount of movement of funds in these idle funds over the years. And most of it is not transferring money out to the general fund. There has been some, which is mostly reimbursements and old grants, but the vast majority of the money that's been identified has actually been used for the purpose it was intended for, which has really been our goal in the idle funds project overall, and the special funds project overall isn't how much money can we transfer to the general fund or the reserve fund. It's how do we activate this money? How do we get it used? So we've freed up a lot of money that's been used for the purpose it was there for, through, as you're saying, kind of, a little politely rattling cages and reminding people that the money is there and should be spent.
Yeah, because one of three good things is going to happen. Either it's going to come and help benefit our budget challenges in the general fund, or it's going to enhance services by providing additional spending on city functions, or it's going to be returned to the people who paid it, most of whom are probably local, and it will create an economic stimulative effect. One of three good things is going to happen, but it has to happen. We have to get it to the point of decision on each one of these funds. Okay, with that, I have members who have questions or comments. Mr. De Leon. I see your hand. I don't know if your hand was up intentionally or not.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. De Leon.
Thank you. Not so much a question, but when it's ready, when you're ready to entertain, I just have an amending motion for number 23. I have several projects, Mr. Chair, pending, to the point that you made just a few moments ago, that are likely to be drawn from this account, account 489M and 58D. And I would like those to be considered separately from those to be used for budget balancing. So that is an amending motion when you're so prepared, Mr. Chair, to entertain it.
Okay, I have a few from another council office that I want to read in, and then when we do that, we'll just add yours. And I know Ms. Rodriguez, I think, has some. Mr. Blumenfield has, so why don't we do that?
Okay.
I'll start, and then we'll just all add on to it, and those will be the funds that we will put into that separate category of ongoing monitoring without recommendations for sweeping, returning, or borrowing from.
We heard you loud and clear, so we took our cue from you, right away.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions before we get to that process, members? Okay. Okay, good. So then let me just, before I miss it, I know CD11 had a number of funds, so I'm going to just go ahead and read those off. So the recommendation would be that for the following funds, the committee would request that the controller and the CAO report on potential pending projects likely to draw down on these accounts. 864, Venice Coastal Parking Impact. 912, Oxford Triangle Venice Neighborhood Protection and Offsite Street Beautification. 61A, 61B, 61C, 61D, 61F, and 61H. Fund 911, Channel Gateway Venice Affordable Housing. 403, Project Heavy West LA. 53M, LA Metro Transit Authority Grant Projects. 813, Bureau of Engineering Assessment, Special Assessment. 858, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy Fund. 48C, EPA Underground Storage Tank Fields Grant. 48G, Local Housing. 212, Equestrian Facilities Trust. 364, Major City Planning Grant. And 336, Fire Hydrant Installation and Main Replacement. And if those have not already been provided in writing to the clerk, they will be. And then I think other members have additions to that. So Mr. De Leon, now is the best time to do that if you'd like.
Okay, thank you much, Mr. Chair. Like I said just a few moments ago, I have an amending motion for this very file item. I have several projects, obviously, in the district are likely to be drawn from account 49M as well as 58D. I would like those to be considered separately from those to be used for budget balancing.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you. To add, I would withhold the 623 Terabella Fenton Avenue Street Drainage District, the 879E Bernani Scholarship Trust, and the 49 units are bid.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Blumenfield.
Great, thank you. Yeah, there are three funds related to the Warner Center development that should not be swept, that all have clear intentions, and we have plans for them. 577, the Warner Center Cultural Affairs Trust. The 56Q Village at Topanga Public Benefits Trust. And 43W, the Warner Center Air Quality, which is the one that the school district called about, and that money goes to the school district, but it has a very specific purpose, and you heard them call in for it. So those three funds I'd like to take out of this report.
Very good. So with that, members, the recommendation would be then, Mr. Crawford, that as to all of those funds, we will treat those separately from the funds listed in your report. And those funds will be subject to continued monitoring. As to the funds that have not been mentioned that are in your report, I'd like you to come back in 30 days with the controller's recommendations jointly with the city attorney on those special funds that would be a relatively low risk to escheat into the general fund, and recommendations to repeal their enacting ordinances. B, special funds that should be returned to the original source, the remaining balances and recommendations to repeal the enacting ordinances. And then C, those special funds which are best used for loans to the general fund, and recommendations for the terms under which loans could be utilized and repaid pursuant to their enacting ordinances. So nothing in this, members, nothing in our vote is sweeping anything at this moment, but we will have back before us those recommendations in 30 days as to those three categories of funds.
Can I ask a quick clarification on the list of funds from that you read from CD 11? A, can we get the list? And I'm sure we can get that. B, there are a lot of those that were listed are going to fall in a couple of the categories that you read. Are you wanting us to fully exclude that entire list from our next report, or how are you wanting us to proceed with those? Because I think the other funds that were listed by the members kind of have active purposes, for lack of a better term. And I know a number, the CD11 list, kind of asking for projects, and I know at least a handful of those don't have applicable uses at this point. So
here's what I'm going to ask. Since we're not taking any action on any of these funds with this vote, when you come back next time, before you come back next time, I will get you that list. We'll get you that, before the day is out. And then if you could work with CD11 to make those determinations, then you can feel free to bring those back in your report when it comes back next time, and we'll take up your recommendations and consider them in light of CD11's requests.
Will do. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you. Matt, I just really quick, I want to make sure you're not making reference to the Equestrian Trust Fund, but maybe something else, because that's kind of a in-motion conversation for projects as they become available. So I just want to make sure
I'll be super happy when there's spending from the Equestrian Fund. That's been one that's been on my radar for the whole time.
Trust me, we're teeing up for that, but this is citywide, so that's why it's a competitive process. But yeah.
Great. No, I know there's live uses for that money.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And again, this is what this process is about. If it takes a little stirring to get things going, that's a good thing. Mr. Blumenfield, did you have additional comment? Your hand is up. No?
No, I didn't lower it. Sorry.
Okay. Very good. Well, if there's no other questions or concerns, members, let's go ahead and call the roll on the recommendations as I've stated.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
De Leon. De Leon.
I'm sorry. I thought aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
5 ayes. This matter is approved as stated by the chair.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Appreciate your good work on continuing work on this. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other open session items before the committee?
No. Ready for closed session.
All right. Then we will now proceed into closed session. Thank you to the members of the public who joined us.
Okay, one moment. Ready.
All right, the Budget and Finance Committee is now back in open session. We've concluded our closed session items. Is there any other business before the committee?
The desk is clear.
And Mr. Fauble, is there anything that we needed to report from closed session?
There is not.
All right, then with that, thank you, members. Thank you to the members of the public who joined us. We are adjourned. Have a great day, everyone.